In order to expand or condense a logarithm, we need to remember a few properties. Also, we need to understand what does it mean exactly when we expand or condense a logarithm. So when we're expanding it, basically we're going from something that is simple to something that is complex. So again, if we're expanding, we're going from something that's simple to something that is complex and so on. So if we were to apply these rules or properties, we probably should put a name to it. We're going to call the first one here the product property or the product rule. The second one, we're going to call it a quotient property. And where we're getting the names from are basically what's happening with the argument. So either we're multiplying with the argument or we're dividing with the argument. Or the third possibility is that we're dealing with a power. So this is the power property or the power rule for a logarithm. Notice here that we're taking the argument and raising it to a power. So suppose we had to expand the following expression. We look at the argument, and remember our rules are based on what's happening with the argument. If there's a product in the argument, then we're going to apply the product property. If there's a quotient, we'll apply the quotient property. And if there's a power, we'll apply the power property. Notice that we're multiplying 4 times x squared here. According to the product property, we're going to basically separate this as an addition problem. So we can say that this is the same as saying log base 8 of 4 plus log base 8 of x squared. Notice that we can't break this log with the 4 down anymore because we're not multiplying, we're not dividing, and it's certainly not being raised to a power. But the same cannot be said for this x squared. This x squared has a power in it, which means that we can use the power rule to break it down. So the first part of it, we said we couldn't change. So we're going to keep that log base 8 of 4 exactly the same. But for the second part, we know that we can take this 2, move it to the front. This is just using the power rule, plus 2. And then we're going to have that log base 8 of x. So this is our completed answer for our expanded logarithm. Notice that we can't expand it anymore because each of the arguments do not have multiplication or division or a power in it. Pause this one and try to see if you can answer it and come up with the same answer that I do. All right, so what we're going to do is we look at the argument. And our argument here has division. So that means that we can use the quotient rule. So our quotient rule says whatever we're dividing, so we're dividing this value and this value, that we can rewrite it as subtraction. So we're going to say log base 7 of 5y to the 4th minus log base 7 of 4. In each of the arguments, we need to make sure that there's nothing else that can be, no other property that can be used. So this 4 does not have multiplication or division, so we can't break it down any further, or any powers. This 5y to the 4th has both multiplication and a power, so that means that we're going to apply 2 properties to break this one down. Let's use the multiplication, the product property first. So for the product property, we know we can rewrite that as log base 7 of 5 plus log base 7 of y to the 4th. The second part, we're going to keep it exactly how it is because we can't break that down any further. So again, we check again and we notice that this y to the 4th as an argument has a power in it, so we can use the power rule. So if we were to continue, log base 7 of 5 would stay the same. Now it's going to be plus log, actually we're going to take this 4 and move it to the front here. So it's plus 4 times log base 7 of y, And we're going to keep this minus log base 7 of 4 exactly the same. So this is our expanded expression. Can you think about what rules might be applied here? Pause it and try it yourself. Notice that in our argument that we are multiplying the 8 and also we're multiplying the x times the square root of 7. So if we apply the product rule, it's basically going to expand as log of 8 plus log of x plus log of square root of 7. And some people might say we're done, but remember that square root of 7 is the same as saying 7 to the 1/2. Half powers are square roots. So we could say this is basically log of 7 to the 1/2. And of course, if we apply the power rule, this 1/2 is going to end up coming in the front here. So our final answer really is going to include this 1/2 log 7. Everything else is going to stay the same. Pause the video and try this one yourself. On this one, we know that in our argument, we have division as well as multiplication. So we're going to use both we're going to use both the product as well as the quotient rules. So the quotient rule says that we can separate it by taking the numerator, so log of 5x, and writing it as subtraction with the denominator, so log base 3 of y. But notice that the 5x can actually be broken down a little bit more. So we're going to write that as log of 5 plus log of x. And then, of course, we're keeping the minus log base 3 the same because of the y the same because this y has no power, it has no multiplication, it has no division in it. And so our final answer is what we have here.